So let's take a few minutes to fill in this document. Make sure you have a complete copy. In milliliters, we decided it was lowercase m, uppercase L. And if we have less than 1 milliliter, then we round to the nearest hundredth. And that's 2 decimal places. And if it's greater than 1 milliliter, then round to the nearest tenth, which is 1 decimal place. Then if you're working in kilograms, kg, or pounds, lb, you round to the nearest tenth. Again, that's 1 decimal place. And then if you're working in milligrams, mg, or grams, g, all lowercase, round to the nearest thousandth. And that's going to be 3 decimal places. Then hopefully I've clarified here that all of the rounding rules above apply if the last digit after the decimal is not a 0. If the last digit after decimal is a 0, we omit it. The trailing zeros rule trumps any rounding rules. So it's more important not to have a trailing 0 than to be rounded as specified. So if you have 15.0 milliliters, you write 15 with no decimal and no trailing 0 for clarity. Then if we have 15.270, we would write it as 15.27, but then it's greater than 1 milliliter, so we should round to 15.3. Then 187.0 pounds, we should write as 187 pounds, so the trailing 0 rule trumps the rounding rule. Then 23.56740 milligrams, we should write as 23.5674 milligrams by the trailing zeros rule, but then we should round its milligrams to the nearest thousandth, 23.567 milligrams. Leading zeros are a lot simpler. If there's a number smaller than 1, we put a 0 before the decimal. It warns the reader that a decimal is coming. It would be really easy to miss this tiny decimal. And 125 milligrams is 1,000 times as much as 0.125 milligrams. Okay, the military time seemed like it came pretty easily to you. I think it just takes a lot of practice to do it quickly in your head. So we got 1400, 2145, 0815, and then 2205 went to standard time as 10:05 p.m. Okay, so then there's some examples here. So number 1, if we round it, we would round to 10.8 milliliters because it's more than 1 milliliter, so we round to the nearest tenth. Then number 2, the leading 0 is missing, and then if it's smaller than 1 milliliter, we round to the nearest hundredth, or 2 decimal places. And if it's not clear where to round 9249 to, this is what I think about. I say, well, is it closer to 9200 or 9300? And then I can see that it's closer to 9200. So let me erase that. Okay, and number 3, we should round to 128, and it would be 0.0 if we were rounding to the nearest tenth. So we leave off that trailing 0 and write it as 128. And then number 4, we would round it to the nearest thousandth, which would be 1.450, but the trailing zeros rule tells us we should write it as 1.45. And then number 5 is going to round, if you put another drop in there, it's going to round up to 260. So again, by the trailing zeros rule, no decimal and no trailing zeros. Number 6, we get 0135 and 70027. 1600, and 1947. And then if we go back the other way, we're going to get 12:35 a.m., 10:05 a.m., 11:59 p.m., and 5 p.m. The next little tables are two different kinds of converting. On the left is metric to metric, different metric units. On the right is going back and forth between metric and household measurements, like you might see in a recipe book. And these will become important next week when we start looking at intake and outgo. So we have 1,000 milliliters is 1 liter, and we use a capital L for liters. 1,000 milligrams mg is 1 gram g, and 1,000 micrograms mcg is 1 milligram. Then the household measures, we have 1 kilogram kg is 2.2 pounds. So if you took a bag of sugar and took it in a 5-pound bag of sugar and cut it in half, that'd be about 1 kilogram, a little over. 30 milliliters is 1 fluid ounce. There's a distinction between fluid ounce and a weight of an ounce. They're the same for water. 15 milliliters is 1 tablespoon, and you might see this as TBSP or capital P or TBSP without the capital T. 5 milliliters is 1 teaspoon, so you're going to see that as lowercase t or TSP. And then 2.54 centimeters is 1 inch. And you might end up using that calculation if you're in pediatrics and measuring babies. So then we have some conversion writing here that you can read on your own, but I want to do a couple of examples with you. So if I have 230 pounds and I want to convert it to kilograms, I write 230 pounds. And then I need to change pounds into kilograms. So I want the 1 kilogram weighs the same as 2.2 pounds. And I'm dividing by 2 roughly. So I should get a smaller number. So I'm going to get 104.55 kilograms, but I should round to 104.6 kilograms by my rounding rules. Then 34 kilograms, you use the conversion factor the other way. You want the kilograms on the bottom, so you need the pounds on the top. And now I'm multiplying by 2, so I should end up with a bigger number, and I get 74.8 pounds. It already is rounded to the nearest tenth, so I don't need to do any additional rounding. So then let's look at 79.2 milliliters. Converted into ounces. So I look back at my conversions and I say I want the milliliters on the bottom and the ounces on the top. And it looks like 1 ounce is the same amount as 30 milliliters. I'm dividing by 30, so I expect to get a smaller number. And I get 2.64 mils, but I should round to 2.6 milliliters because it's greater than 1 milliliter. And this problem, let's change it to just convert 4 liters in 3.5 hours into milliliters per minute. And don't round until the end. So 4 liters over 3.5 hours, that's a rate. Time always goes in the bottom of a rate of how fast is something happening. And we want to convert our liters into milliliters, so we need 1,000 milliliters in 1 liter. And then we convert hours into minutes by 1 hour in 60 minutes. And the hours cancel, and the liters cancel, so I'm left with milliliters on the top and minutes on the bottom. So my units are correct. And I get 19.05, and then you would have to round as instructed because our rounding rules don't apply to something after we've done a calculation and it's a rate. So then let's look at these last examples. That was exciting. So we're going to do some conversions here where we have 3 ounces and 30 milliliters is the same amount as 1 ounce. So we get a total of 90 milliliters if we're measuring with a different size cup. We get 90 little tiny cupfuls from the 3 bigger cups of ounces. And then 1/4 tablespoon times 15 milliliters in 1 tablespoon. And that would be 3.75 milliliters, but we should round to 3.8 milliliters by our rounding rules. Then number 3, 20 milliliters times 1 teaspoon for each 5 milliliters. So I end up with 4 teaspoons. Number 4, 19 inches. And there are 2.54 centimeters in an inch. If you look at a ruler that has both markings on it, you can see that. So I get 48.26 centimeters, and this would have to be rounded as instructed because it's not in our list of rounding rules. And then 100 centimeters and 2.54 centimeters in each inch. So the centimeters will cancel and give me 39.3701 inches, and you would have to round as instructed in that problem. Okay, and then number 6 is converting from metric to metric. So I have 780 milliliters, and I have 1 liter for each 1,000 milliliters. So I'm going to get a lot smaller number. I get 0.78, and don't forget the leading 0. Then 0.54 grams times 1,000 milligrams in each gram gives me 540 milligrams, no decimal place and no trailing 0. 0.97 micrograms times 1 milligram per 1,000 micrograms. And that's going to be 0.00097 milligrams. And don't forget your leading 0. And then number 5, 0.0075 grams times 1,000 milligrams in each gram times 1,000 micrograms in each milligram, and you're going to get 75,000 micrograms. No decimal, no trailing 0. I hope this is helpful.